Okay, we will start. Good morning. Thank you for joining this briefing with Minister Amichai Chikli, Minister of the Israeli Minister of Diaspora Affairs and Combating Antisemitism. Thank you for joining us. And
thank you for coming.
And Minister Chikli will speak, and then we will give you the possibility to ask questions, and also after maybe one-on-one interviews if you want. I think it's important. We are also joined by people remotely, so on Zoom. We also have the opportunity to ask questions. It's in a very special time now, like 3 days after the unprecedented Iranian attacks against Israel. And we saw yesterday here the foreign minister of the European Union met, and they decided to work on the sanctions against Iran, and especially against the IRGC. So I'm sure that Minister Chikli will have something to say about it, and so please, you have.
Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. I will start with referring to the assault on Israel, the missiles attack. I know that some may think that this was a small-scale attack. Let's go through the numbers. We are speaking about 110 ballistic missiles. I think it's maybe the largest missile attack in the past 2 decades. At one time, each and every one of those missiles carrying at least 300 kilograms of explosives. These are the ballistic missiles. Around 7 infiltrated and landed mostly in the Negev, some in the Dead Sea. It's clear that there was an intention to destroy some of our air bases. That was the aim, and the Iranian failed to do it. Upon these ballistic missiles, we had around 38 cruise missiles with a smaller amount of explosives, 150 kilo. It's half of ballistic missiles, and around 200 drones. None of the drones and none of the cruise missiles infiltrated, and most of them were destroyed upon the skies of Iraq, Gulf area, and a lot of those drones were destroyed not just by Israeli Air Force, but the coalition, especially the CENTCOM command of the US, and as far as I know, also British jets, mainly F-16. These are the technical details. So we must understand that this was not a small attack. It was a major attack. It was a very serious attack, and we should address this attack and response not based on the defense system that we have, but rather we need to respond based on the true intention of the Iranian, and to treat the situation as if each and every one of those missiles hit his target. This is how we should respond. I'm sure you know that one of the missiles landed in the Negev next to a Bedouin village, and there is a girl in a severe condition. She's been treated as we speak, in Soroka Hospital, Beersheba, a Bedouin girl, and she is now been treated by doctors, Arabs and Jews combined. This is Israel, and this is this attack. We need to understand, so far, Iran uses its proxies against us, Houthis, Hamas, Iran also proudly said that they were part of the planning of the massacre of October 7, including Mahdawi himself, who was targeted and successfully eliminated in Damascus. I hope you all understand that we did not attack the embassy. This is a building next to the embassy and not the embassy itself. A terror base. So now we have a direct threat coming from Iran. I think that this is positive because the masks are off and we all understand who is behind Hamas, who is behind Hezbollah, who is behind the Houthis. The situation is more clear. The war is more clear. And obviously, I hope that the people that are sitting in the room understand that this is not just the war of Israel and Iran. This is the war of Western civilization against a fanatic, barbarous regime who wants not just Iran to have these modesty police on the street, but they want this kind of police all across the globe. This is part of their ideology. I think it's also important to learn what is the ideology of the Revolutionary Guards. There is a concept, they call it Sudud al-Inqilab in Persian, which means to take the revolution outside of the borders of Iran and to expand it. They actually managed to do it quite well in the Middle East. I sure you all understand there is no Iraq today. There is no Iraq. Iraq is governed mainly by Iran. There is no Syria. It's mainly Iran and Russia. And there is no Lebanon. There is no Lebanon. The main force in Lebanon is Hezbollah. This is the reality in the Middle East. Wherever Iran touches, they bring destruction and chaos and terror. And we are very proud to fight the war against Iran. And we're not afraid of them. We saw how the former totalitarian regime in the region ended. We saw Gaddafi, we saw Saddam Hussein, and the Ayatollahs, the tyrants from Iran will face the same destiny by their own people. The greatest enemy of the Iranian regime is the Iranian people. And we believe that Iran will be free. And we are calling for students in European campuses maybe to change the slogan. Iran is the state that needs to be free. To see a change in the Middle East. And it's also very important to understand that the attack on October 7, in terms of timing, was because Iran was very afraid of the normalization with Saudi Arabia. It was not just an attack against the citizens of Otef Aza. It was an attack on peace in the Middle East. Because normalization with Saudi Arabia, peace with Saudi Arabia, is a threat to the Iranian order, an order of terror and radical Islam. So this is regarding Iran. I think that the next state that we need to address, far more sophisticated, but not less dangerous than Iran, is Qatar. Qatar, with the most influential jihadist propaganda website and media channel of Al Jazeera. Nice logo. But this is jihadist propaganda in almost every possible language. And this is what brings the people to the streets of Europe. I think we made a terrible mistake to accept the idea of Qatar as a mediator. I'm now criticizing my own government, but this is part of I think, my obligation to say what I think on that matter. And we should have or Egypt or Saudi Arabia. Qatar is not a mediator. Qatar is a player, the #1 funding source for Hamas. They are part of the massacre of October 7. They are part of jihadist propaganda. And they are a threat, first, to every European capital where they buy and invest in mosques. And as I mentioned before, Al Jazeera and all these NGOs that they are involved with. Qatar and Iran, they are the enemies. Yes, Qatar is a Sunni state, Muslim Brotherhood. Iran is a Shia state. But they are both part of what we call the radical jihadist Islam. We are not in a war against Muslims. We are looking for peace with the moderate Muslim countries. We already had major achievements with the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and peace will continue despite the resistance of Iran. And I'm very optimistic that we now have, the situation is very, very clear. So this is one. Second, I also brought a report that we made at the Ministry of Diaspora first to make it more easy to have all the information I'm now passing to Gaza in regarding UNRWA. So you have all the, I don't think I brought enough for everyone, but we also have PDF. So you can take it if you want. I think that when we're speaking about the next steps in Gaza, so although there is a lot of opposition, let's say, to the continuing of the war in Gaza, we have no other choice. Hamas has one mission, and this is to survive. And we cannot allow Hamas to survive. Hamas must be destroyed. It must be destroyed. So we have around 5 Hamas battalions in Rafah. This is approximately 7,000 terrorists. We have 1 or 2 more battalions functioning in the center of Gaza. And that's it. The total was 25. So we made a lot of progress. I think that this is the most complicated war we fought. I don't think it's the most difficult. I think the War of Independence was far more difficult. Yom Kippur War was far more difficult, but this is the most complicated war. 900 kilometers of tunnels. The enemy doesn't carry weapon. I had the privilege to be a few days with the troops. The enemy doesn't carry weapon. They take the weapon only when they reach a certain building. They take RPG, the kalach, they have it almost in every other house. They carry out an attack, and then they will go out as if they are just walking by. So I know you saw, there was some videos showing people without weapons that are being attacked. Also, in one of the cases, it was hostages, friendly fire, with 3 hostages that were killed by the IDF. And this is just to understand how complex is the war. Because the enemy doesn't carry weapon when he's moving from one point to another. They carry weapon only when they are in the attack. So the mechanism is to understand which is the territory in which we basically have no citizen, because population was evacuated. There were warnings, there is fighting. And this is just to give you a sense of the reality on the ground of fighting an organization like Hamas, that when they were asked about the city that they were building beneath the ground, why don't you let the citizens to go into the tunnels? Why don't you take care of the citizens of Gaza? So the Hamas leader said, this is the role of the UN. We don't care about, it's not our job. So one important issue is UNRWA. What we have in this report is first to understand that from the very basic mission of the organization, I'm sure you all know that there is a refugee agency for all the refugees on earth. Rwanda, Middle East, Syria, Ukraine, UNHCR. And then there is an agency only for the Palestinians. And in this agency, which is UNRWA, so you have more and more refugees from every year because you can inherit your refuginess status to your children and grandchildren. I think that the most ridiculous refugee is Rashida Tlaib. You know, she is a refugee, a congresswoman, a refugee. This is first. Second, we all know about the fact that UNRWA employees were part of October 7 massacre. We are speaking about 12 who were actively involved. We have 485 UNRWA employees who are members of Hamas military wing, and at least 1,450 who are part of the movement, not the military, but the movement of Hamas. UNRWA infrastructure, we found endless weapons in UNRWA schools, and you have some of the evidence and some of the materials here in the report, and you can use it. I think it's very, very important that European states, the US, India, Australia, Canada, Western countries will stop funding this organization. And we haven't spoke about the incitement in UNRWA schools. So this is very, very important for the day after. I mentioned UNRWA, I mentioned Rafah, I mentioned Iran. Hezbollah, last thing that we also need to discuss. Hezbollah opened the war. There was no attack on Hezbollah before we left Lebanon at 2000. There is an agreement with Hezbollah, 1701. And we have people, tens of thousands of people who left their home because of the war with Hezbollah. And we have a mission to bring the people back home. We want them to go back to schools in September. We want to continue their life. And we have no other choice but to make sure that Hezbollah is moving away north of the Litani, as it says in 1701. I don't think that this is going to be through diplomatic channels. We don't see motivation of Hezbollah to voluntarily move north. So we also need to be prepared for military operation against Hezbollah, because our obligation to our citizens and to our sovereignty makes it inevitable that we need to go and fight this organization, which is, as we all understand, one part of the puzzle of the Iranian war against us, which is also the war against the entire Western civilization. Thank you. And now, if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chikli. Floor is yours. Questions, please. Your name and media.
It's Spanish News Agency. So, first clarification. You said, I think, 7,000 Hamas members in the whole Gaza or in the south, or how many?
No. I said 7,000. I said that 5 battalions, okay, equals at around 7,000 terrorists, only in Rafah.
So you altogether would be 7,000 terrorists in that, all the battalion?
No, I meant just in Rafah.
Just in Rafah.
Just in Rafah.
Altogether, do you have
Altogether, how are active? I think we have around you have at least the same number that is all across. Most of them are not functioning in organized unit. They went underground, and they have sporadic attacks that they are launching, but they're not operating with companies, platoons. In Rafah, they are still functioning as some sort of a terror army.
And for the civilian casualties, do you have a figure? What is it?
So this is a crucial point. This is a crucial point. The health ministry of Gaza is the same health ministry who said that there are thousands of casualties in Ahali Hospital that we found out after the investigation. And I'm speaking about European sources. If I'm not mistaken, it was French. They said that at maximum 50 people were killed in Ahali Hospital from a rocket that failed. You recall this at the beginning of the war? Okay, so we cannot rely on the health ministry of Hamas. This is one. Second, the health ministry of Hamas never admit that the casualties are from Hamas military wing. So they give a number, and we don't know, are these the terrorists or these are civilians? So when you take the information from the Ministry of Health of Gaza, they are speaking about 30,000. I think now they made an accusation that this is actually less. I saw it recently this week. So at least half of this number should be people who are involved in the war, but it is very, very difficult to determine the exact numbers. What we know for sure, no attack is being launched to civilians, to hit civilians. Each and every target is aimed to military assets, aimed to terrorist infrastructure or terrorist personnel. And as I mentioned before, in some of the cases, the terrorist does not carry weapon. So the picture can be complicated, but these are terrorists. And in all the cases of the places where we are maneuvering with infantry, with tanks, etc., there are warnings at least a few days before to evacuate the region. So this is also something which is very, very important to notice. So we don't have the exact numbers of how many people were killed, and out of those people, how many are Hamas terrorists. The only thing I'm saying is that we need to be very, very skeptical about the numbers generally, and then also how many of this number that the Hamas reports, how many are militants and how many are civilians.
Yes, please. From EIPA, French news agency. But still, the number of casualties, civil casualties, quite high, and it's recognized all over the world, including by the UN. Aren't you afraid that this situation might jeopardize your support Israel has in Europe, particularly in the European Union and some other countries, and also in public opinions?
Yeah, so I don't think we have any other choice. I remind everyone there was a ceasefire on October 6th. There was no war in Gaza. We evacuated and destroyed our own villages in Gush Katif. We brought the Palestinian Authority to take control. They lost control. Hamas took control. Hamas was heavily funded by Qatar. It was heavily funded by Iran. And they made Gaza into a front-based division of Iran. What are the results? We saw it on October 7. We saw it on October 7. And people in Otev Gaza, they cannot return to Be'eri, they cannot return to Kfar Aza because of the devastating destruction and the massacre that was there. And I hope people remember the atrocities of October 7, the rape, the executing of and torturing of entire families. I don't know who watched this horror Hamas movie. A family is sitting, the father, they take his eye out, the mother, they cut her breast. This is Hamas. We cannot allow Hamas to survive. We need to finish this war. Unfortunately, because unlike the war in Ukraine, when all the states that surrounds Ukraine took refugees by the millions, Egypt took none of the refugees. Arab states that speaks highly about how they care about the Palestinians, they took no refugees. And therefore, the territory is heavily populated. Hamas is working from and fighting from within the population, in some cases using them in a brutal way to protect themselves. And yes, this is a war, and in the war, sometimes also civilians can get hit unintentionally. This is the reality. It's a tough reality. But as I mentioned before, there is no way we can accept Hamas to continue and govern Gaza Strip and to be a relevant player in the region.
Sorry, Jeroen Zurlach from Crack Magazine here in Belgium. It's often been alleged that the Israeli government has no strategy for what they call day after, for when the war ends. So for you,
I can refer.
I mean, what is the plan? Who will govern?
Yeah. Okay. First and foremost, before we speak about the day after, we need to focus on the present. Currently, Hamas is still in power. Currently, it still has functioning battalions. So this is mission number 1. And this mission can take us another 6 months. It can be long. Second, there might be, for a time being, a situation in which we govern the civil aspects for several months until we have some sort of
Israeli government.
Not government, military. Yeah. Until we have a coalition of states who are willing to take responsibility. I think naturally that UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, these are the players that needs to be involved. The Abraham Accords players are those who needs to be involved in renovation and de-escalation of Gaza. So this is when we're looking forward. These are the players that needs to reshape Gaza and rebuild Gaza with the assistance of the US, the EU, etc. We must make sure that Qatar is not involved because it's the same ideology of Hamas, that AKP Turkey is not involved because it's the same ideology of Hamas. Erdogan is just like Hamas. Qatar is just like Hamas. It's the same movement, ideological movement. They are all students of Yusuf al-Qaradawi.
Questions, please.
Thanks very much, Mr. Burchard, for EW. I just wanted to ask you for a bit more information on your statement about the strike in Damascus. You said we did not attack the embassy, but it was a building next to the embassy. Can you just clarify what you meant?
Yeah, there is the building of the embassy, and there is an infrastructure of the ICRJ, which was a headquarter of the Revolutionary Guard, and the target was in this perimeter.
Yes.
I think when I told you before, you said that the Iranian attack in a way is very confusing. You said because the mosque, the one thing we can see who is behind and so on. You could argue that you were seeking for it, like you were looking for a response of the land to actually involve and use the land related to the question that you brought from this building.
The conspiracy theory? It's a conspiracy theory. No. So let me.
I heard it very well, but the minister said.
No, I
did not say it was fun. Quite on the contrary. It's what it was very
okay. I can manage. Sir, remind me the name. Javier. I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
I'm answering your question. First and foremost, about Madawi. Madawi was one of the people who are responsible for October 7. One of the people who is responsible for sending explosives, weapons to Judea and Samaria. One of the people who is responsible for arming Hezbollah, a legitimate target of a terror organization. I know that Sanchez is, let's say, not exactly, doesn't have a clear moral compass, not against Hamas and not against the terror regime of Iran. He's an extremely weak leader. And I referred on Twitter, you can follow about my opinion about Sanchez. But it's important to understand what I said before is that the positive things is that the masks are removed, not the attack is positive.
You haven't mentioned the hostages. There were reports that Hamas apparently said that we don't have enough hostages still alive. That's one question.
Okay, I will refer. Let's.
Probably, presumably, most of them are kept in Rafah, where the Hamas is still very strong. What is your strategy to liberate those hostages or to at least secure their release? You mentioned Qatar is for you an enemy, and you need Qatar in a way, or you think you don't need Qatar to get all.
Okay. So first, we have 133 hostages in which we don't know exactly the situation. Some of them are in the hand of Hamas. Some of them are in the hand of Islamic Jihad. And we don't have the exact information about their situation. I think that the shift in the American position in the past months, with putting most of the pressure on Israel not to strike in Rafah, made it very, very difficult to reach a deal. It was a wrong strategy, and we saw the results. And now this is more difficult. The only way to create a situation that will allow us to reach to a deal that we can bring our people back is through effective military pressure, effective heavy military pressure on Hamas. No other way. And also the elimination of the leaders, including those who are now in the jacuzzi in Doha.
Yes.
Today, the European Council is meeting here in Brussels.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of measures should they take regarding Iran?
I think that one of the most fascinating outcomes of Iran attack was the uprising of the Iranian opposition, who was very loud after the attack, understanding that it's now a momentum. It's not an easy goal to see democracy coming back to Iran, to see a positive regime taking power in Iran, but I think it's achievable. The only people who can do it are the Iranians themselves, but we can help them. We can help them. First, we can raise our voice and say, this is a terror regime. This is an illegitimate regime. And we need to have heavy sanctions. First, in terms of economy, I think also the release of money, billions of dollars, also by the current US administration, was a fatal mistake that allow Iran to continue with their plans. And therefore, economic sanctions are the most important, and to make sure that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard is designated as a terror organization in all the EU states. No diplomacy with Iran, no business with Iran. And this will also send a clear message to the Iranian people that they have Europe behind their back.
My quick question on hostages, you said that the only way to get a deal and to force Hamas to the table to bring back hostages is through heavy military pressure. But I mean, this has been going on. There's been extraordinarily heavy military pressure for 6 months. I think only one hostage has been brought back alive.
No. No. First of all, you had the first deal where we released most of the women and all of the children and some of the elderlies, and this deal was after a massive, heavy operation in the northern part of Gaza. The operation in Khan Yunis was different in terms of the intensity, and in Rafah we don't have an operation in Rafah. There will be an operation in Rafah. We don't have any other choice. And hopefully an effective operation in Rafah will change the picture. And I also refer to the leadership of this terror organization. Losing the leaders is also important. To hunt Sinewar, to hunt Muhammad Def, this is a very important mission. And also more military operation to rescue small groups if there are conditions that allow us to do it, like there was in Rafah a month ago.
We have also, before your question, we have also a question from a viewer online.
Sure.
I will read it for you. It's from Lola Overles from Daily L'Opinion in Paris. She asked 2 questions, in fact. What's your take on Republican congressmen suggesting that Iranian attacks are a result of US weakening support for Israel, and President Biden's decision not to retaliate indicates a shift away from support Israel? This is a bit like you said.
Yeah, I referred to it to some extent. I'm not taking the entire statement. We appreciate first of all the significant role of the U.S. and especially CENTCOM Command in the recent attack. This is not a joke. It was very, very serious. We appreciate the statements of Biden at the beginning of the war. The entire citizens of Israel, I think entire Jewish people, was very moved by his words. It doesn't say that there is no criticism on two issues. One is the money that was freezed and then was opened, billions of dollars that Iran can now use to fund its military causes. Major mistake. And the second major mistake is to put the pressure on Israel not to operate in Rafah, which made it very, very difficult to reach a deal to release the hostages. So I don't think that the US is moving away from Israel. That's not the case. But I think that there are mistakes, strategic mistake, that we are paying heavy price about these mistakes. Trying to appease the Iranian is a wrong strategy. Is a wrong strategy. This is a beast. You don't feed the beast. You feed the beast, they want more. The beast should be eliminated.
Next question.
David France, your democracy, I know it's on Truman and the peace process in Europe. What specifically are you looking for from European leaders, maybe even changing policy or movement of policy? Secondarily, given that they have wars for 2,000 years and then basically that stopped, the peace process in Europe, which one has been successful, then you can draw from that. Secondarily, I mentioned UNHCR, UNRWA. UNRWA was created in the Cold War period to cause maximum amount of problems between the Soviet Union and the West. Do you see any reality in actually changing the situation so the UNRWA attributes to be moved into UNHCR? Is there any reality? Is there any possibility?
So UNRWA can function because of the money she gets from different states. The moment that European states, Western states, we stop funding UNRWA, we will have other UN authorities, health, food, UNCHR, they can take the control over these humanitarian aspects, and they can do the job. They can do the job. So this is one. And the other questions were very, very wide. So if you can have more specific questions, like about UNRWA, so I can refer to expectations from European leaders. Look, I think there are positive things that we see now here in Belgium. We have Samidun, pro-terrorist leader, has been hopefully will be expelled outside of the country. Organizations like Samidun, like Badil, who are heavily connected to the PFLP, to Hamas. These are organizations that if their activity will be shut down and their leaders will be expelled, so we will have a different reality in the streets of Europe, and it will be far more safe for Europeans, for a Jewish minority in these states. So this is something which is very, very important. And I think that here on that particular case, Germany is the leading force of taking serious measures to act against terror organization affiliated groups in Europe. And what's happening now in Belgium is also positive. So this is one. Second, standing against Iran, loud, clear. This is very, very important. And we saw almost the entire European countries, beside Sanchez, with clear statements against Iran. And I think that this is also positive. We obviously understand that many of the leaders worried about the day after. And I think that in order to reach fast to the day after, we need to finish Rafah. So the more pressure we have against the operation in Rafah, it takes the day after and it makes it, we'll reach the more slow. So the idea is to, let's finish with Rafah, and then we can bring positive forces and renovate and de-escalate the region. And that should be a common mission for the state of Israel, for the EU, for the moderate Muslim countries. We can move on with the normalization. We can shape the Middle East based on peace and not on terror. And I think that this should be a common goal. And it's very, very important. Look, we are fighting for the Western way of life. This is what we are fighting for. If we want to have festival musics, if we want our people to dress however they want, to say whatever they want, to have a freedom of faith, a freedom of speech, this is the war. It's an ideological war. And it is very, very clear to everyone who understands the philosophy of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, the philosophy of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is more sophisticated. But if you understand the philosophy, you understand the war. This is a war between ideologies. And anyone who believes in liberal values should stand 100% with the state of Israel, against Hamas, against Iran.
Could I just ask you about that ideological warfare? Because that one should kill people. The ideology still circulates. How do you attack the ideology?
Okay, so let's go back to World War II. The question is, what is the power that this ideology possesses? So before Nazi Germany was defeated, or before Caesar Japan was defeated, they had a lot of power. It takes a war to disarm, and put them and to isolate them. But so the operational military aspect is just one aspect. We need to make sure that Qatar is weak. When we're saying, okay, we accept Al Jazeera and we accept the fact that they can build here their dawah propaganda and to fund all these radical Muslim organizations, when you allow them to do it, you are losing the ideological war.
Yes. I am here as a friend of Israel, and as a friend of Israel, I would like to ask a follow-up question that I do not understand why it has not been on the table. Isn't it possible to build a safe area for civilians in northern Gaza that will allow the escape route and to diminish the inevitable impact of the war on a crowded place with civilians?
So before the operation in Rafah, just like we done in other areas of Gaza Strip, people will be alerted and they can move to the center of Gaza. They can move to the region of Deir el-Balach. They can move to the region of Al-Muassi. They can move to the region of Absan el-Kbir, Absan el-Zrir, Khan Yunis. They can go all over this place. And so that's what's going to happen.
It's not exactly organizing a safe zone.
This is the safe zone. The operation is.
It's a zone where you would be managing supplies, where you would identify the people, where people could be completely at ease with their concerns of survival.
Yes, look, Managing the humanitarian efforts in Gaza is complicated now because Hamas still have power and it takes over a lot of the supply that goes in. Therefore, I mentioned that it's very, very important to have control over this supply and to make sure it reaches the people and it not reaches Hamas.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Belgian Prime Minister, Belgian Foreign Minister, Amichai Chikli, during this conflict been very adamant about being insistent on ceasefire, insistent on effective Palestinian statehood.
Okay, so first, I think we cannot speak about ceasefire without the hostages coming back. We cannot speak about ceasefire when Hamas is a functioning organization in Gaza. It's irrelevant to speak about ceasefire. And second, raising the issue of a Palestinian state as a result, as an outcome of October 7 is insane. It is saying you go into a villages on Shabbat morning, you will execute parents in front of their children's eyes. You will rape women in the middle of a road and then execute the women that you are mutilating and raping, and we will offer you a state. This is insanity. Two options, or to be insane or to be evil. And therefore, to raise this issue now is just something which is unacceptable. Second, there was some sort of a state in Gaza. No Israeli villages. No Israeli villages. We took them out. We brought the Palestinian Authority to take control. And what are the results of this experiment? October 7. So what are you suggesting? To do the same at the heart of the land of Israel? On the mountains of Judea and Samaria? Doesn't sound reasonable.
I have another question from a viewer online. It's from Maneli Mirkan from House of Liberty, Paris. She has the following: our ongoing battle against the IRGC intensifies as our confrontation with the EU grows more active. With our she speaks about their legal petition underway and a potential forthcoming complaint against the EU institutions. The question is, what additional recommendations do you suggest for the Iranian diaspora beyond the current efforts?
Okay, so as I mentioned, putting the pressure on the Iranian regime and to have the goal should be to liberate Iran from this terror regime. It will go through sanctions, economic sanctions, raising the awareness. More and more European leaders, Western leaders need to speak vocally, clearly, and to back Iranian opposition. It is not happening at the moment. We need to back these people. We need to bring them also the stage on the media to express themselves, to speak, and to create a pressure on the media, to create economic pressure, to put also pressure on the individual leaders of Iranian Revolutionary Guard, to prevent them from moving freely in the West, to take their assets, etc., to wage an economical war against the terror regime in Iran, to wage an ideological war, to support the opposition, loud and clear. They have less power than it seems. The people in Iran don't want to walk in the streets with a modesty police looking at their back and throwing in their face of the woman this liquid acid to destroy their faces or to cut their faces like Masha Hamini. This is a war of good against evil. Okay, last question. Yeah.
The Minister for the Diaspora feels there has been a huge rise in anti-Semitism here in Europe. What is the Israeli response to that, and how do we do that in conjunction with the countries here, with the government and also the Jewish communities?
So first, we saw a spike on anti-Semitism incidents on social media, on the streets. There is also a correlation in between radical Muslim population and the nature of the assaults. What's happening in London is extremely disturbing. The fact that MPs like Mike Freer resigned because his office was set ablaze for supporting the state of Israel. I think this is a frightening development. That in the state that brought the Magna Carta, liberal values, one of the most ancient democracies that still exist, people can no longer speak freely. Even the steel statue of Churchill needs security. And this is these are negative developments. And but we did see states that are taking serious measure to fight anti-Semitism. I've mentioned before Germany, with preventing demonstrations calling for the genocide of Israel and calling these slogans are from the river to the sea, which is an attempt to basically say we want to have more and more October 7. That's the true nature of this statement. So this is positive. Moving out organizations like Samidun, like Badil, monitoring what's happening on the social media platforms. We do it from Israel. We share information with the European governments. Also, European governments does it themselves. And I think this is also important to refer to immigration policies. This is obviously a matter of European countries, and it's up to their people to decide. But the idea of multiculturalism and thinking that you can take people from Iraq or Syria and save the Western values as they were before, with massive immigration and irresponsible immigration. Look at Malmo. Look at Malmo. We had a strong Jewish community in Malmo, and now this is the most dangerous place for Jews in Europe, center for anti-Semitism and violence. And also here, I came to speak here in a conference, this conference of NatCon. It was moved from 3 different spots. You have police that does not allow people to get in. And this is also part of the fight for the freedom of speech, Western values, and this also reflect on anti-Semitism.
No more questions, so thank you very much.
Thanks so much for your patience and for listening, and I hope you deliver the message.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we will